Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Between Friends. I'm so happy to be here, and I see many of you are piping in snowy Kansas City. Nancy Taylor, Fran McCoy up in Puyallup, and Marjorie Hirschberger in Lancaster, PA. I know it's snowing here in Dallas, Texas. That's why I'm broadcasting from home. Our roads are rather frozen and icy, so because Texans don't have experience with snow, it's never a good idea to get in your car if there's ice and snow on the ground in Texas. So just stay home, enjoy the view out your window. If you want to venture out and play in it, please, that's fine. But I never get in my car down here anymore. So we are so excited about today's guest. Oh my gosh, we have so much fun in store for you. And let's see, Valerie Newby, you are in Missouri. Somebody just beat 12 inches of snow. And Judy Quilt, you're so psyched that Joe will be on today. Yeah, you're going to really enjoy Joe. Many of you maybe have not had the opportunity to meet Joe, but after today, he'll be one of your new embroidery friends. So why don't we welcome in Joe Chisum? He is Sew with Joe. He's got vast experience. Hi, Joe. Joe, did I say your last name right?
You got it just right. It's very phonetic.
Right. Okay, good. Oh, they are loving you. Missy Cat from Indianapolis says, "Go, Joe." Cheers from Indianapolis. I imagine a lot of these folks already know you.
Well, if you're in the Brother or Baby Lock line of machines, if you got one of those, you might know me. If not, you should.
That's right.
Hi, I'm Joe.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit tell us how you got started, Joe, because, it's pretty interesting. We don't have a lot of men that teach embroidery, although there's a lot of men that do commercial embroidery. So anyway, who cares? You tell us about your experience and how you got here.
Well, in the very beginning, my mom met my dad, and then fast forward a few years later, I'll save you the boring details there. I started in 2007 as a sewing machine repair tech. I didn't know what a bobbin was, and I was 18, and I just needed to learn how to fix sewing machines. So I learned how to fix sewing machines, and they made me learn how to sew. As you know, a car technician should probably know how to drive, right? So I learned how to sew. I learned how to fix sewing machines. And over the years, I found these sewing machines work much better if we know how to use them. So as part of my technician, I guess you could say trade, I learned how to teach as well. And I got more into teaching and just ended up starting my own little video business, kind of teaching people how to use these machines and get the most out of them.
Well, you definitely have some fans here. I mean, they say, Joe is absolutely the best. Evelyn Larson says that. And
hello, Evelyn.
Yeah, Cup of Joe is great. So tell us, what's Cup of Joe?
Cup of Joe is my way to reach out every week to kind of my followers and do a live video and interact. So I get to see people join in from all different areas, and we get to kind of interact together, ask questions. Every now and then I'll do a Q&A, and I show just another little bit of information. Now it happens at 8 p.m. Eastern time, so it might be a little bit late to have your Cup of Joe, but you can always watch them after on the next day.
Absolutely. And so what day of the week is Cup of Joe?
It's Monday nights. That'll be 8 p.m. Eastern. Yep.
Brave soul. Boy, my Mondays are busy. I couldn't take on a broadcast on a Monday night, but lots of people are ready to get into their sewing for the week, right? So it's a good day to do that.
Yeah, so you can join in live and interact, or, have your Cup of Joe in the morning next day.
That's right. So, Joe, you must have seen, this whole evolution of embroidery machines, as I have. We started on that 4x4 hoop. We had limited rotation, probably only 90 degrees at first on your first machine. And then, 1 degree by 1 degree and inch by inch, it all got bigger, right?
Yeah, it was great for me to see. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with the Designer One by Husqvarna Viking that had floppy disks.
Yeah.
And even then, floppy disks were kind of old. Using floppy disks to embroider felt kind of strange. And it blows my mind today that we're wirelessly sending designs to the
Yeah.
machines and they have cameras and everything else.
Right.
Such a big change in such a short time.
Right. And look at the size of those hoops behind you on the wall. I see the 4x4 and I can identify that 5x7, but wow, those big ones that are surrounding them, huh? Who would have thought all those years ago that literally we would be doing, quilting designs in a 10x16 hoop and managing a full size, queen size, even king size quilt on our home embroidery machines? It just totally blows me away.
That's a great point. And when you're talking about quilting, it wasn't really practical to quilt in the hoop when you had a 4x4 hoop size, but now with 10.5 by 16
Yeah.
and spending 15 minutes per hooping, you could have your quilt done pretty quick.
Right. I used to say that, quilting with a 4x4 hoop was like painting your dining room with a toothbrush. I mean,
It's a
it
great
was not
point,
the right tool, right?
right?
Yeah. But let's see, we have lots of folks that are very familiar with that whole floppy disk thing. Dawn,
Oh,
she had a
yeah.
brother ULT, and Sharon Copper had a FOF 7570 with the disc. And then we have somebody here, Sherry had a Viking Rose, and we have come a long way for sure. And I don't miss those old machines. I mean, well, we grow up, right? And
Right,
sometimes we might yearn for the old days, but not so much with embroidery machines.
right. Yeah, you really
Mhm.
had to be a professor of science to learn how to embroider on
Mhm.
something like the number one plus. If anybody had one of those, my hat's off to you. You're smarter than most to be able to embroider on that.
That's right. That's right. And well, that's very true because here's Kathy Sellner saying her first embroidery machine was a Janome 8000 and you had to use cards. That was my first embroidery machine too, Kathy. And
Wow.
when it came out, there was no instructions. I mean, there was a manual, but it wasn't that legible. It had been, translated from Japanese and not very well. And nobody knew how to use the machine. We didn't know anything about placement or stabilizer. So you had to really stretch your skills. But I'll tell you, I mean, I did quilts back then. The first issue of Designs and Machine Embroidery magazine a million years ago was a quilt that was done on a Janome 9000 that had, I think, 55 hoopings, and it only resulted in a quilt that was about 45 inches square. But I did it. I wouldn't do it again, but I did it anyway.
You got that
Interesting.
Girl Scout badge.
Got that Girl Scout badge. That's right. Let's see. Katie Harper, though, this is pretty funny. She says she still has her number one, but use it for sewing only. I'm sure she's talking about her Viking, right?
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, Jill Mansfield said, I loved your magazine. Boy, we did too at Dime. We loved our magazine. That's what put us on the map for sure. And, but like all things, there's an evolution. And now here we are online and talking to each other like person to person, and we're able to do it every week and sometimes more often. So, Joe, I know you have a 5 great tips that you're going to share on edge to edge quilting with your embroidery machine, right? Do you want to get to it?
Absolutely. Let's pull up that slide and we'll
Okay.
start talking about my 5 tips for edge to edge.
Okay.
And I'll just kind of name them first. First, I like to mark my quilt for parallel hooping. And next, of course, you want to make sure to use quality thread. I've got plenty of that beside me here. It makes a
Absolutely.
really big difference, and you don't want to take that for granted. After using quality thread, another important subject would be to be aware of contrast. Speaking of thread, we'll talk a little bit about that. It has to do with the color of the thread and color of your fabric.
Awesome.
And then after, we've got how you can save time with magnetic hoops. You know me, even when I'm not doing a video with Dime and Eileen, I talk about these magnetic hoops all the time. It makes a big difference. You'll save a lot of time. And then last, I like to say to support the quilt. And that gets to the technical side where you might be able to avoid problems with your design stitching out.
Awesome. So we do have one question, I think, before we move forward, because I know you're going to get into each of these 5 points. And boy, you know, Joe has great tips, so let's pay attention. But Carol Bowser wants to know, what machine do you have now, Joe?
I have the Solaris, and I've put both upgrade kits in it. So it's equivalent to the Solaris 2. Brother has a similar machine called the Luminaire. So Baby Lock Solaris, Brother Luminaire.
Right. So, but many of the tips that you're going to show us today work for a vast variety of machines, you know, but Joe does focus on the Solaris and the Luminaire. And any other machines in there, like the Destiny?
Yeah, of course. So my first experience with this type of a machine was the Baby Lock Destiny. So Baby Lock Destiny and Brother Dream Machine, then Brother Luminaire and Baby Lock Solaris. But there's some other machines in that mix that also benefit from the types of things I teach. That would be the Baby Lock Altair or Baby Lock Meridian, or the Brother Stellaire. There's a couple versions of that Stellaire. Either one will work.
It's amazing how they add another digit after a name, you know, because of an upgrade and improvement to the machine and so forth. And, you know, it's our job, Joe, to kind of stay up on top of that. And many people love that Solaris. One of our friends, Murtis, wants to know, what size magnetic hoop do you use most? So if you don't mind, I'll answer and then you can answer. But when I'm quilting, I use the largest hoop available for that machine. But if I'm purchasing my very first magnetic hoop, I like to tell people to think about what size hoop do they reach for most of the time. And whatever size that is, that's the size you should get in magnetic hoop. Right, Joe?
That's a great point. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're not really going to change.
I do edge-to-edge quilting with the largest available. And on your machine, figure out what your largest hoop size is. And you can go to Dime and purchase that hoop, or support your local dealer and get them from your dealer. The Dime hoops with the largest hoop, it helps you paint with a paintbrush rather than with your toothbrush there.
That's right. Okay, Joe. So I know you're going to move the camera a little bit, and when you get to number 1, which is marking your quilt for parallel hooping, shall we start there?
Sure. So you might see behind me here, I've got a kind of a mock quilt set up here. Now my camera cord is a little bit short, so I'm going to see if I can get an aerial view. And excuse the batting piles under the. You can see lines, and those lines are just going to help me keep things parallel. So I might get questions about how often do you line, or how many marks do you make, and how far apart are those lines, and that really doesn't matter. As long as you can see a couple of them when you're hooping, you're going to know that you're keeping your hoop parallel.
Right. And of course, Joe, if you had seams, then seams would be markers, right?
Oh, absolutely. If you are working with a 9-patch quilt or log cabin or anything with horizontal and vertical seams that are straight to the quilt, then you've already got your lines. So that's an excellent point. I'll just move my camera over here to the machine, and I'm going to put the hoop on my machine. I've already got everything threaded.
Yeah, while Joe's doing that, I just want to encourage people, if you have friends that are interested in quilting with their embroidery machine, invite them now to watch this broadcast, because they're going to learn, Joe's top 5 tips. And boy, he's really an expert. So, let us know, or invite your friends and let them come over and watch this broadcast. He's just getting started really on tip number 2, I guess. Or is this still part of number 1, Joe?
So I'm sorry, I'll just kind of finish up with number 1.
Yeah,
So when
great.
you're hooping your quilt here and you've got some guidelines, you might see it a little better now. Those guidelines, you can look at them and compare them to your hoop. And really that's it. If you have these straight to your hoop, you know that you've hooped it straight. And why is that so important? Well, if you're quilting a whole bunch of embroidery designs in a row or a column, if you start straight and keep straight, that column's not going to walk off your quilt. And then, you might have some problems with aligning your designs. If you just hoop it in the middle and you have no marks or anything to go by, it might look straight to begin with, but if it's off by 1 or 2 degrees with the big quilt, that could be 1 inch when you get to the end. So
Okay, so
that's
Joe,
it.
yeah, we have a couple questions. Like Carol Browser. Oh, well, not that. Carol, we have a hoop compatibility chart over on the DZGNS website, and you can find all of the hoops that are compatible with all the machines. But Allison Holloway wants to know, what do you use to mark your quilt? And some people, like Kathy Selner, says she hasn't really found a product that she's very happy with. So how about you, Joe?
Well, safest bet would be painter's tape, but that gets a little expensive.
Mhm.
You can use a wash away or iron away pen. Right now, I've got a friction here. And what you want to do is test this. Oh, no, that's a real pen. Whoops. Okay, so
We
yep,
don't do
just
that.
keeping everybody on edge there. They look just like real pens. So here we go. All right, so we've got the friction pen here, and you might be able to find these at your local dealer or even office supply stores. So it's Frixion, and you can iron it away. Test it on your fabric in an inconspicuous place first. One thing that I hear and people are marking is that they'll have little white lines left over. Well, that happens when you're kind of creasing the fabric. So if you press on a hard surface, you got your fabric on a hard surface and you press hard with this, it's a sharp tip, and you're actually creating that white mark by creasing your fabric. So try
Mm,
not to press too hard and test it first before you use it on your real quilt.
okay. Joe, I would like to share that I use those friction pens too. And
Great.
I've noticed that they come in two forms. I think the kind you have. And then this one it's clickable. You just, that ex exposes the tip
Oh yeah.
instead of it coming off. And this one actually is a better product than the other. I don't know if the
Oh,
ink's different, but it does seem to remove more easily. Now,
well,
one of
that's
our
great
friends
to know.
wants to know what machine you're using. So Joe is on the Baby Lock Solaris. That's what he's showing you right now. But what he's showing you so far, and probably through the rest of the day, would apply to almost any machine. But Jody
Yes.
Worley is a little confused. So she said, is the quilt top on the bottom? So Joe, your quilt top is the white fabric, correct?
Oh, yes. So I just kind of put something together for ease of video. This is the
Mhm.
quilt top on top.
Okay, great. All right. And then Joyce noticed that you don't have the rulers on your frame. So how are you finding the center so that the design will stitch within the embroidery area of the frame?
Well, I just use the magnetic hoop to hold it still, and center would be according to where the first design stitches. Something that's great about Baby Lock and Brother is that they have cameras, so I can align my next design by camera. Now,
Mhm.
if you are using those rulers, you can line it up by the ruler. But what I'm going to show might be a little bit of a treat to those that have a Brother or Baby Lock, or maybe a little incentive to those that don't. I don't no, I don't work for Baby Lock or Brother, but I just love showing that camera.
Okay, yeah. Well, one more, just before you go there, Nancy Taylor says that she likes her friction, but it seems to dry up too soon. So what I do, Nancy, is I store it vertically in a cup so that it's always standing up. And this pen is like 2 years old. It's never dried up. So as long as I do
Wow,
that, it stays wet. When you store them horizontally, no good, no good. So,
great tip.
okay. All right,
Real
Joe.
cool.
I'll try to stop talking.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah. Do you think we should move on to my next tip?
Yes, let's do it. Well, that's use quality thread.
Yes. All right, so use quality thread. I happen to know a store that sells quality thread. Now you can use polyester or cotton, and that's up to you. Right now, my personal preference is polyester just because it's much more affordable. It's a stronger thread, but that's the nature of polyester versus cotton. If you like to use cotton, I'm sure you know a good brand or two of cotton thread. But polyester thread, I know a good embroidery polyester thread that also works great for quilting. I've seen a lot of people use this on their long arm quilting machines too. And that would be the Exquisite thread by Dime. It's a 40 weight polyester. And I put that in the top and bottom. So when I'm
Nice.
using that, I use, of course, if you have a brother or baby lock, I'll just give you an extra little tip. When you're putting the same thread top and bottom, like I am, use the other bobbin case that has a green dot. So it's the standard bobbin case. In my hand, I have the bobbin case that has a purple dot. Because this is in my hand, it means it's not in the machine. So you want to use the one that has a green dot on the screw. And I'll see if I can correct my lighting here. I had it on my face earlier. That might make a difference. All right, so maybe you can see that. The one you want will have a green dot on that little screw there. Okay.
Mhm.
So quality thread, I've grown to be reliant on the quality and predictability of the Exquisite thread by Dime. So I've got it all ready, available, pretty much every color. I've got large spools, and I've got the regular spools too.
That's
Now you
great,
might
Joe.
see
I
I've
mean,
got this.
that's what I stitch with every day for sure.
That's great. And again, it's your choice if you want to use cotton. Do you have a cotton thread that you sell at Dime?
No, we don't. And frankly, I have experimented with some cotton quilting threads, but I don't like how they lint. They leave
It
lint
does,
all
yeah.
over my bobbin case. And, that's what I like about poly. It's just, and I like the sheen. I like the contrast of that sheen on the thread with your solid cotton matte fabrics. I think that just adds a little twinkle to it without being overpowering in any way.
Yeah, I like the way that you put that.
Yeah, it's nice. Mhm.
All right. Well, I have a very simple design here, and we can sew this design with your thread, and then we'll
Okay.
talk about a couple little things along the way. So we got our hoop marked, and we know to use quality thread there. Another thing that I'm going to kind of lead into is about contrast, and some of you might have questions about that. Let's see here. Well, if you have one of these machines, this might be a little helpful tip. We'll go to embroidery and we're going to turn off the thread cutters. It's not in my top 5 tips, but it is important if you want to kind of keep an eye on those thread tails. So we're going to press the needle minus plus here. It's at the bottom. And we're going to jump to the location of the first stitch. So that's +1, because you don't want to pull up your bobbin thread in the middle and then have a
Mhm.
big tail. So we go to the location of the first stitch. Okay. And I'm going to press the scissor menu and I'm going to turn off my cutters. That's both of these buttons. If they're dark, they're on, and if they're light, they're off. So if you have a brother or baby lock, that will be how you do it. On your machine, if you have something different, you might consider doing the same. All right.
Okay,
So,
so that's interesting. I don't normally do that.
well, turning off your cutter, if you have a larger quilt, that will
Yeah,
save you from having to hunt down those little loops on the back of the quilt.
right,
It's just kind of keeping all of those thread tails and loops on the top. So these
right.
couple steps are just to help us kind of keep track of where all those little thread tails are.
Okay, nice. And do you recommend that for continuous line quilting designs only, or?
Well, I would say I'd recommend that for designs where the front and back are going to be on display. So when you're quilting, the front and back of the quilt matter.
Right.
And so you want
Yeah.
them both to be pretty. And
Okay, cool.
when your machine starts sewing, it needs a little bit of a thread tail. We used to
Mhm.
hold our thread tails, but that little bit of a thread tail, it gets couched onto the back of the quilt, and it's
Right.
something for you to go back and trim up later. And after you rehoop, 12 or 50 times, that means you got
Right.
to find those little loops 12 or 50 times.
Okay. Good tip. I like that. Okay, so now one of our friends asked, Marianne was asking, and maybe she missed it in the beginning, was do we use the exquisite 40 weight to quilt your quilt top too, or only for embroidery? So yes, that's what Joe's showing here. He has the exquisite 40 in the needle and also in the bobbin as he quilts this quilt sandwich, right, Joe?
Absolutely. Yeah, we got the same weight and same brand in the top and bottom, and that's going to give us the best tension results.
Great.
We
Yeah,
want to see
you
a
want
pretty front and
balanced
back.
thread, right?
I'm
For
sorry?
quilting.
Yeah.
We want balanced thread for quilting.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's what works best for me. Now we've got a 90 embroidery needle in there right now, which I feel
Okay.
is good for the weight of a quilt. And I was talking about contrast. Since I have black thread in the top and bottom, I'm safe from any kind of contrast battle. And when contrast comes into play, you have to consider the color of 4 different things. And you want to consider the color of your backing, the color or general color, I guess, of your quilt top. It might be a whole bunch of different colors, right? So we've got the color of the quilt top, color of the backing, the color of the top thread, and the color of the bobbin thread. So think about the colors of all of those, write them down if you need to. And a general rule, if you don't want to have any little, I would have to say, like little moments where you see dots of color just kind of standing out, right? Um,
Mhm.
that's going to happen if you have the bobbin thread contrasting both of your top thread and top fabric. So let's say we have a white bobbin in there right now. The white bobbin contrasts my top thread, but the white bobbin does not contrast my top fabric. So it would be safe to use a white bobbin according to the top of my quilt. We wouldn't see little white dots because the white dots match the color of the quilt top. So just think about contrast. If you're going to use 2 different colors of thread, top and bottom, just make sure that one of those threads matches your top, your quilt top, and one matches, of course, the backing, if that makes any sense.
Sure, that makes great sense. Great sense. So let me just catch some people up. Kathy is wondering what stabilizer you're using. And so, Joe, I imagine you're not using any stabilizer to quilt. Is that correct?
That's correct. I've got batting and backing and quilt top. That's it.
That's it. Right. Just like you would on a long arm, because that's really what Joe's doing is telling his embroidery machine to act like a long arm. Just quilt batting, back fabric, the back of the quilt and the quilt top. And then Becky Blackburn, Joe is on the Baby Lock Solaris. That's the machine that he's using today.
Yeah.
And let's see, Kathy Harper says, why did you get those dots? So I'm not quite sure what that is, what that question means. But
Oh,
there's,
the dots. Yeah, the
yeah,
dots would be, let's say if I had a red bobbin thread in here, the red bobbin thread does contrast my quilt top. So if I
yeah,
have red bobbin and black top thread, the red bobbin contrasts both. And I would say try to avoid doing that because you'll see little dots of red on occasion. And it doesn't mean you have a tension problem. It just means you're looking through the hole the needle made and that red stands out.
that's right. That's a really good point. A lot of people fuss with the tension unnecessarily. But if you hold that quilt, a quilted quilt up to the sun, you have holes in it, right, Joe?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're
Yeah.
looking at the hole that the needle made and the thread that's
Mhm.
sitting inside that hole.
Now, normally, if it's a bed quilt and you're going to launder it, those holes will close. That's what the batting will do as it fluffs. It closes
Oh,
that up.
right.
Wall quilts, not so much. I mean, they're there, right?
Yeah. So
Mhm.
I have some pins in here and I'm going to take the moment to remove them before I forget. So if you do pin your quilt, um, you might want to remove those pins.
Yes, good idea, Joe. And you use T-pins, huh?
Well, I couldn't find my safety pins, but those work just fine.
Okay.
Just bury that sharp point so you're not going to poke yourself. All right.
That's a good point. So Esther wants to know what size needle. Joe said he's using a 9014.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Now I'm going to hold my thread tail backwards, and I'm going to press the needle down, needle up button. Most embroidery machines have this, or you can use your hand wheel if you need to. And this is going to feel kind of old fashioned. We're going to pull up the bobbin thread. Anybody with a long arm still does this, and we're quilting on our machines, so we want to act like we have a long arm. Now I pulled this little thread, the top thread, after I pressed that needle up down button 2 times, and a little bobbin thread poked through. So this bobbin thread, I can pull it and have a little bit of a thread tail there. Now I do like to have my top thread tail under the foot to start. So I'll just do needle up, down again, and I'll pull the top thread tail through as well. We've got our top thread and bobbin thread both under my embroidery foot, and I'm at the location of the first stitch. So now I know where my thread tails are, and I can trim them from a place that I can reach without having to turn my quilt over. All right.
Nice. Yeah, I love that, Joe.
So we talked a little bit about contrast, and we threw in some extra little tips here and there as we went. The monster hoop, of course, I may have mentioned this a couple times, the dime hoop monster, but I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit more about that. I might as well start my design. As this is sewing, the monster snap hoop or snap hoop monster is going to make a really big difference for ease of hooping. And you'll see when I rehoop this, I don't actually have to remove the hoop from the machine. And I don't know if that's the way that you do edge-to-edge quilting, but it saves so much time. I'm sorry, what was that?
I said absolutely. I never take that bottom frame off until I turn the machine off.
And a lot of people have asked me in email if these magnets are safe for the machine. And what do you say to that?
Oh, absolutely. And they've been thoroughly tested. We have to remember, we were talking, Joe, about the early machines that you and I both embroidered on. I started on a Janome 8000. And in the manual, it said, do not have a magnetic pin cushion near the machine. That was good advice at the time. But today, the brain of that embroidery machine on your Solaris, as fabulous as that machine is about the size of your thumbnail. And the insulation surrounding all of that technology is sufficient enough to block the magnetic force from interfering with the computer that's on the Solaris, on any of the machines. Think about, how you carry your whole world on your cell phone, right? Everything. It's in your pocket. Like Steve Jobs said, we're going to put it in your back pocket. And so true. So, and I can tell you with confidence that every time a new machine comes out, and if we develop a magnetic hoop for it, we test it thoroughly on that machine and make sure that there is no problems. And if you think about it, in my office, in my sewing studio, I have, in that building, in a couple of rooms, there's about 12 embroidery machines, or maybe 10. But not too far away are literally thousands of magnetic hoops, and no problems. Okay, so
great to hear it from you.
Yeah, let's get back to some questions. Let's see, Catherine Dunlap. So I want to explain this to her because we did cover it a little bit, but she's asking, do you change the tension for this thick sandwich versus normal embroidery, which pulls the thread to the back? So do you want to respond to that, Joe?
Oh, I'm happy to respond. And just let me know if I need to pause the machine for, the audio.
Sure.
You can hear me okay?
Oh, we can, yes.
Great. So I don't adjust the tension. It's very, very rare for me ever to adjust the tension. With Baby Lock and Brother and other brands as well, they have electronic tension, and they have a way of reading the fabric that's in the hoop. When your foot goes down to touch the fabric, you notice it touches the fabric and then it bounces off of it. And that's when the machine reads how thick the fabric is, and it determines the type of tension needed and presser foot height needed. So I don't find myself adjusting the tension, and that's going to make a huge difference, for edge-to-edge quilting. Because something that a long armor needs to understand, and one of the very first lessons is how to adjust tension, whereas our home embroidery machines, we really don't have to worry about it when we're doing edge-to-edge quilting.
Right. And also, I would like to expand on that a little bit. In regular embroidery, you're using a very lightweight bobbin thread. And it's that difference in the weight of the bobbin thread versus the needle thread, which is normally 40 weight, that allows that lighter weight bobbin thread to pull that heavier embroidery thread to the wrong side of the embroidery, which is desirable on traditional embroidery. But on quilting, like Joe says, we want it to be balanced. And starting with same weight in needle and bobbin, doesn't have to be the same color, but same weight is the way to get a balanced stitch. And then Joe, Carolyn Kessler wants to know, what speed are you stitching at there?
So I started at a slow speed, but it's because I was working with something that had glue in it. Prior to this, I paused my machine and sped it up all the way to the fastest. So I like to sew at fast speed most time.
Oh, yeah, me too. Never enough time. Okay, so Lillian wants to know, do you recommend using invisible thread for the top, for the needle thread?
I recommend trying it because you don't know unless you try. And worst case scenario is you don't like the way it comes out. By the way, I'm just pressing the scissors right now to cut the thread. Just because you turned off the cutter doesn't mean you can't manually cut it. And I'll talk about that in a second. But to answer your question, oh, I'm sorry. I got distracted. What was that question again?
I got distracted too.
Yes.
She had asked what was the speed that you were stitching at, but
oh yeah, and I got off on a tangent there, so
that's okay.
There we go.
But I like how. So you do have to. You turn the cutters off, so you're going to have to engage the cutter, by touching the icon on the machine to cut that thread before advancing the fabric, right?
Right. And it's going to be much easier to locate that tail and trim it because it's longer and it will be found at the location of the last stitch. Now I have some scissors. I'll cut my thread real quick. And let's see here. Those first two tails that I pulled up my bobbin thread, I can trim them close to the fabric because my machine has tied off that stitch. And most embroidery designs have a tie off at the start. So it's secure if you trim it right to the fabric.
That's right. Oh, here Denise S says, wow, top speed, that makes her nervous. You go, Joe, right?
Well, but if you're working with a project that requires your personal reaction time, like applique or many layers in the hoop that might get caught on something, if you need more personal reaction time for that project, you can slow the machine down. Otherwise, it doesn't hurt to run the machine at top speed. It's actually great.
Yeah, and frankly, the machine will not run at top speed for every element of an embroidery design. It will on quilting because that's just a straight running stitch. But if you have complex fills or satins, it's only going to go so fast, right, Joe?
Yeah, the machine takes over and it knows when to slow down. This is my favorite part, by the way.
Okay.
I don't know about you, but when I pick up this hoop here and I leave the bottom half of the hoop on the machine, I can slide this over. And this is just showing everybody that if Joe does it, you can do it too, right? Now, you might get nervous about putting that magnet near the screen. Just don't put it right on the screen, of course, but it does nothing to your machine. It doesn't hurt it at all. And look, you can pick that up and move it over. And now you can have freedom of movement. You've got two hands that you can use to move your quilt. Look, the bottom half is still on. And I wouldn't imagine doing this on any hoop other than the dime magnetic hoops because this is flat and you're not trying to defy the shape of your quilt. Some of the standard hoops, they have a ledge and you're kind of manipulating the shape of your quilt to fit those hoops. And I'm not sure if that makes enough sense, but that little ledge there makes all the difference in whether or not you can rehoop like I'm doing now.
Absolutely. And then if you were using a standard hoop and you went to insert the inner ring into the outer ring, it wobbles
Oh
on
yeah.
that machine bed because it's not a flat surface. So look, I would never quilt with a standard hoop. Definitely not.
Yeah. Now, I think doing it this way, it's important to have a design that's smaller than your maximum hoop size. So the reason I do that is I'm using a camera. Now, if you don't have a camera, you probably have lines on your hoop that you can use to refer to, like those little stickers that come with it.
Mm-hmm.
But because I have the camera, I know that I can make any kind of arrangement of design if the design is not the maximum size. So I have a little wiggle room where I can drag my design around and reposition or even rotate if I need to. I shouldn't
That's
have to
awesome.
rotate because I've got these parallel lines that are going to help me keep everything straight.
It's a great explanation, Joe. I really like how you visually showed how you mark the quilt, and then, you use those lines so that they're parallel. I've have on occasion brought in a quilter's ruler to make sure that my marked line is truly parallel with, that magnetic top frame. And I would do that on maybe a whole cloth quilt where it's going to be a glaring mistake if it's off a little bit. But it's quilting, right? We're not doctors and nurses. It's not muscle and bone. So if we're off a millimeter, it doesn't really matter. Right, Joe?
That's right. It's quilting. It's not doctors and bones. Yep. So one thing I'm doing here, might be raising a few eyebrows. We're kind of making sure the quilt is flat and straight, but you never want to stretch your quilt. If you stitch on a stretched quilt, it'll be perfect until you take it out of the hoop. And then it's going to go back to its original shape there. So I like the quilt to be flat, but not stretched. And, how do you do that? Well, we start out by getting it nice and flat and even. We've got everything parallel here. And we've got one more step before I actually start sewing. So everything's nice and parallel. I'm looking at my lines to refer to that. And again, I don't care, where the lines land as long as they're parallel, right?
Right.
And then after I get everything nice and straight, this is just something that I do. I pick up one side of the hoop and let it back down. And what that's done is it kind of relaxed the quilt. So if it was stretched at the moment, it let it go back to its original shape without letting it become, all pillowy and loose.
That's a great tip, Joe. I like that.
Cool. And I'm sure everybody has their own methods, but that's what works for me.
That's a really great tip. That's it's not unlike when you hoop in a standard hoop. I often do that too. Never mind, different topic. But it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me for sure.
Now, I do have one more tip that I'll get, kind of show everybody or talk about in a moment. But I do want to kind of show how you rehoop and to reposition your design. In fact, I'm going to move this over just a little bit more now that I've already talked about it. I think I need a little more room for my next design. As long as I have a little bit of the previous design in my view area, that should be just fine. This magnet's really easy to lift up when you have a quilt in it. If you try to put the two hoops together without anything in between, you might feel like this is too hard for me. But when you have a quilt in there, it's real easy to lift up.
That's awesome, Joe. They're loving this. I'm telling you, they are loving your tips.
Oh, that's great to hear. I'm happy to help. All right, so we got everything in how we want it, and it's not stretched, and I can see a little bit of my previous design there. And what I'm going to do is just kind of show a little teaser. If you have a baby locker brother, great. If you don't, well, maybe you can learn a thing or two here. We're just going to press a little button that looks like a camera. And, I have everybody jump to the first stitch, but if you've done that already, you want to be on stitch number 0 if you have a baby lock or brother to do this, okay? If you have a different alignment method, you're free to use that. But if I press my camera here and then press scan, my machine's going to take a picture of the whole hoop, and you're going to see it scanning around. Now, if you have a baby lock, Altair, or Meridian, or the Brother Stellaire, they are pretty new machines, and they have a way to show the image of your quilt on the background. You know, if you have one of those machines and you want more info of how to do this on your machine, feel free to email me. I hope that's okay, Eileen.
Oh, sure. Sure.
Let them, yeah. So send me an email. My email's easy to guess. It's sewwithjoe@gmail.com. If you have a Altair or Meridian or Stellaire and you'd like to see how to do this. Yeah. All right. So I've scanned my quilt. Now let's look at the screen here. And the lighting in my room might not be the best, but I hope you can see the marks that I made on my quilt.
We can, Joe. We can see the stitch design and that grid that you drew. Yep.
That's great. So look, as I'm moving my design around, how I can see it and compare it to the previous design, right? Isn't that cool?
That is so cool.
I can make them line up exactly how I want them to. And let's see, I think for this one, I had a little bit of an offset. I designed this so so every other row would stitch halfway through. This is a design that I had come up with, and I'm just going to move my quilt a little bit to give me more room for that. Something about live videos is that you'll never know, what can happen and go wrong.
Yeah. You're pretty brave. I don't do a lot of machine work on live videos, but you are
no problem.
Great, my friend.
So I just realized that I don't have enough room to move this down. So how do I fix that? Well, I'm just going to scan again. I've rehooped my fabric. I'm just going to scan again.
Isn't that awesome? That's great.
And then, we do have a projector available for Solaris and Luminaire. If anybody has used that, that is just the bee's knees, because you can get right in on the stitch and make sure that it's aligned perfect.
That's amazing. I have the Solaris, and boy, I do love that machine. In fact, pretty soon, I'm going to quilt this quilt that's sitting beside me. Pretty soon, once it's all pieced.
Oh, that's exciting! And look at the fabric colors in that one too. That's very bright. I like it.
Yeah, it's a baby quilt.
Oh, do you have a new baby in the family?
I do. I'm going to be a grandmom. Mm-hmm.
I am an uncle again. 2 weeks ago, my sister had a fresh newborn baby.
Oh, how wonderful. Congratulations to you and your sister and your whole family. It's always so exciting to welcome a new one.
Oh, thank you. Oh, yeah. So you can look here after I rescanned. You can see how I'm just matching this design up. I'm moving it by finger.
Will you look at that precision? I mean, on an embroidery machine, Joe, that's amazing.
I love it. And I tell you what, one of my first tips, of course, was keeping the fabric straight when you rehoop. But you might see that I didn't rehoop. When I rehooped my third time, it's not perfectly straight. So there's actually a really cool thing that you can do if you don't have it hooped perfectly straight. Rather than rehooping on this machine, you can rotate the design to be straight. So you see up here it matches, but down here it doesn't.
Okay.
And that's kind of what I like to see in an edge-to-edge design is 2 points of reference, where you can get something straight if you have 2 points to refer to. So I have it matching there, but not there. That means I need to rotate my design. I'll press Layout, Rotate, and I've got 1 or 1/10 of a degree at a time. Let's try 1 degree, maybe 1 more degree. And then, I think we can just fine tune it. And then I can get that. Anyone know what a WYSIWYG is?
No.
What you see is what you get.
I like that. Joe, can you zoom in on that connection? I think you can, right?
Oh, absolutely. You'd want to do that here in Embroidery Edit. Notice the little zoom here. Oh, I think my camera is off the zoom.
No, you're,
So you
oh,
can
it
zoom
was.
in and
Yeah.
embroidery edit. That's right here. And then you can just kind of press 200 or 400 on the Solaris and Luminaire. And you can pan and move over, and you can look at your new stitch versus your old one. Now,
That's
I can
awesome.
change the color. If I'm having any trouble seeing that, I can change the color of my new one.
Right.
And then I can see what the difference is.
That's brilliant. I love that. Well, so many people are wishing us congratulations. But one of them, Shirley, her goddaughter just had a baby girl this morning. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Shirley.
So sweet. That's so sweet. Yeah. Happy days in her family, right? Oh, Joe, that was fantastic.
Yeah. Now, do you want to see the projector? What do you think?
Well, I would love to see the projector because someone asked, why didn't you use the projector? So,
well, I've got to be fair. I got to be fair because we don't always have the projector. And so only the Solaris and Luminaire have it. But I do like to show it any chance I got. And maybe it'll make the difference for you. So next to the camera, you'll see a little cone. It looks like an alien abduction, I guess. That's your projector. And you press this, and your machine's going to project. Now, if your projector isn't working, you're not on stitch number 0. So just press return and then press embroidery, and you'll be able to project. Now, see this little window? This is your projection window. That's how much your machine's able to show. I'm going to drag it and only look at the areas that matter. I don't care about this part of the design. I care about where it matches my previous design. So if you didn't use the camera, you can use the projector instead and project in areas that matter, where the designs match up. Notice black, gray, white. I'll talk about that in a second. But we're going to take the camera over, and this doesn't show up on camera so well when it's on white. So I'm going to turn it on the black background, and you can see the red stitches.
Wow.
Now take a look. That's pretty cool. And
that's
if you're happy
very
with the
cool.
alignment, so what I'm seeing is, oh, this has a little more precision than my camera, and I didn't align it just right. So I'm going to move my design and make it match up even better.
That's awesome.
And now I can go and look at another area that's important to me. And that's that one right there. And this shows me whether or not I have my design rotated correct. And look, my points match. So this design looks like it's going to match my old design just right. When I check 2 points and I'm happy with that, I can start sewing.
That's great, Joe. It's
Remember,
mesmerizing, isn't it, everybody? I know. I'm just drooling. I have this machine. I want to go stitch on
it. Right? So I'm going to pull up my bobbin thread. And that's the same as before. Remember, you're doing that on stitch number 1, not on stitch number 0. Okay. There we go. And let's just make sure my thread cutters are off. They are perfect. So I'm ready to sew, and we can see that this design will match up. And I do have one last tip, and unfortunately I didn't have that support set up, but I have a 36-inch quilt right now, and it's not so important with my 36-inch quilt. One thing that would be extremely important, and I get a lot of emails about this, would be any real quilt, a larger quilt. If you're going to embroider on a larger quilt, you really need to support the weight of the quilt. So support your local dealer and support your quilt because the weight of the quilt can fight your machine. It can fight your embroidery hoop. And if you have it hanging down off the table, it's like somebody pulling on your embroidery hoop, and your design won't match up. Your design won't go where you want it to go. So support the weight of the quilt, but also think about the back. What's your quilt doing behind your machine, in between the machine and the wall? Is your quilt piling up into a mountain? Will that mountain of quilt fight your hoop when your hoop goes back? So
it's almost like you got to keep your eye on 7 different things when you're embroidering on a real quilt, right? So how do we contain all these things, and how do we keep them corralled? And I think Eileen has a perfect solution for us.
I do. Well, here at Dime, we use the weightless quilter. It's a product that I invented several years ago for that very problem. In fact, I really invented it for free motion quilters. You know, those talented artists who sit at their machine and move the entire quilt by hand as they kind of paint with thread and do the free motion quilting. And after introducing it to free motion quilters, I had so many embroiderers say, can I use it on my embroidery machine? And then I tried it with my embroidery machine, and wow, that's what really opened up the whole world of large quilts quilted on an embroidery machine, because it is the weight of the quilt that causes quilt drag. And quilt drag is when the quilt is so heavy, it drags the hoop, either the inner frame of a standard hoop or the magnetic top frame off the bottom metal frame. And that will happen. I mean, think about it. It just doesn't make sense. These hoops and machines were designed, even the Solaris, to handle the sewing field that measures 16 by 10 inches, right? That's really what they were designed for. They were not designed to handle a queen size quilt as the pantograph just stitches in a small 10 by 16 area. So we have to do our job by holding up the bulk of that quilt and maintaining that weight so that it's not creating quilt drag. And we have a video to kind of show you just how flexible the weightless quilter is. My team here at Dime will show that. Now this is my studio downtown. That's a Solaris. And that's a large quilt that I have on there. Yeah. And it's, running. Is it? I think that it's frozen right now, the video.
It looks like it's running for me.
Oh, does it? Okay. Yeah, it's running now. Very good. So as you can see, though, those poles flex, right? They kind of they bend with the quilt as the hoop, the pantograph, is moving. And that's what you want to do. You want to keep that quilt above the machine bed. That's the whole key. Not necessarily on the table around it, because the quilt can get caught underneath the hoop between the bottom of the bottom frame and the machine bed or the pantograph arm. There's a lot going on back there. Let's see. And let's see, Brenda wants to know, if you don't have the weightless quilter, is there another way? There most certainly is. And I've written a book called Machine Embroidered Quilting in 8 Easy Lessons. And it's a topic that I cover pretty deeply in there. You can use ironing boards. There are several different things you can do. But truth be told, if you're going to quilt with your embroidery machine, a weightless quilter is worth every penny. And let's see, if you have a question about Dime product, my team in here will give you the customer service connection or communication. So just hang in there for just a minute. So explain the door behind you, quilt planning. Thank you. The door behind me, it goes to a closet. And if I opened it up, you'd see, the mess behind it, right? So, okay, so Dawn wants to know, and we'll just hit on this because this is like a whole separate class, but she wants to know, when you do edge to edge on a large quilt, do you start in the middle and go all the way to the right or above and so forth? So I divide my large quilts into zones or quadrants. And I start in the center, and then I work. It depends on the embroidery design that I'm using. I can go in a vertical fashion and do a column from the middle to the top of the quilt. And then I go back to the middle and back up to the top of the quilt. Or if my edge to edge design is going to connect horizontally, then I will start in the center and go to the right, all the way out to the right edge, come back to the center at the row above, and go all the way out to, so I'm always kind of working out. And I'll do the entire right half of the quilt in that fashion. And after that point, I then take the quilt and flip it around 180. So now the unquilted portion is underneath the needle and the quilted portion is extending off the machine. So that's the basic how I do that. How about you,
That's
Joe?
some information there. And to be perfectly honest, when I start quilting, I like to do smaller quilts so I can get on to the next project. So the tips and information you have for larger quilts are, worth every dime, right?
Absolutely. Well,
So
Joe, it was so fun having you here today. Your 5 tips. So I'll just bring PowerPoint. Are you through with that last one?
absolutely. I just wanted to show everyone the tension of the thread on the back too. This
Oh,
is the
great.
back. And look
Okay.
how good the machine does. What a great job the machine does with
Yeah.
keeping tension perfect without having to fuss with it.
That's beautiful. Just so well done. I love it. That's going to be a beautiful design. They're diamonds, kind of tumbling
Yeah,
diamonds. Is that something that you designed yourself, I'm sure?
it is. It was done in IQ Designer. So you can design your own quilting designs edge to edge right on your machine.
It's amazing. Just amazing. So if we go back into PowerPoint, we'll just do a quick recap. Joe's top 5 lessons or tips are: mark your quilt for parallel hooping, use quality thread, and be aware of contrast. I really love that point. So if you didn't catch the entire show today, please watch the rebroadcast right here, on our Facebook page. It'll be here forever. And look at that point of beware of contrast, because it's not just about the thread and the quilt top. You also talk about the bobbin thread and the back of the quilt, which I thought was great, right?
Well, thanks very much.
Mhm.
It's been a great opportunity to join you for your live video amongst friends. It's pretty awesome to see some people I know and a lot of people that I don't know. I hope that some of this information was helpful to you. Now, again, I am Joe from Sew with Joe, and if you're interested in more types of things, you can join my free Facebook group. That's going to be, I think they have a little link there. It's at the bottom. It's facebook.com/groups/Sew with Joe. You can also just search Sew with Joe and you should be able to find it. Then
That's
if you
awesome.
want some more fun, I've got a website too. My website has a lot of projects that you can buy, including this one, videos and PDF instructions with embroidery designs. My website is sewwithjoe.com. I think that will be across the bottom as well. So join us for live Monday night videos, 8 p.m. Eastern time on the Facebook group. That's the Sew with Joe Facebook group, or check out my website, sewwithjoe.com. I got a list of all my past videos, and you can learn a little thing or two from some of those past videos.
That's awesome, Joe. You do a great service to our community. All of these Baby Lock and Brother users, they owe you a lot. I think you've helped them learn their machines, expand their skills, and that's, a rising tide floats all boats. We want everybody to embroider, right?
Absolutely. And I'm very thankful for this community and creators, of course, companies like Dime, because they provide me with the right tools to get my embroidery job done. So thanks to the community and thanks to you, Eileen, and Dime.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome, Joe. Thanks for being my guest today. And we hope to see you again here on Between Friends.
I look forward to it.
Okay. Well, folks, wasn't that great to have Joe in the house? Oh my goodness, he was a delight. I've had the pleasure of working with Joe a little bit through the years. He has been an employee at Flash Zone Quilt down in South Florida, who is a good customer of Dime's, and I have family in that area, so that's where they shop. But today's program was brought to you, of course, by Dime. And we always have a special product on sale every week. And this week, you're going to love it. All stabilizer is on sale. All stabilizer is on sale. Even those really pricey ones, the ones that we, kind of eke out and use kind of sparingly. And one of those favorite ones of mine is the heavyweight soluble stabilizer. And you may be wondering why. Well, That's what I use to make my patches. And patches don't have anything to do with edge-to-edge quilting, but they're pretty trendy too right now. And another thing that's really trendy is a word game called Wordle. Do y'all play Wordle? So are you a Wordle fan? Well, I have to confess that I just started playing this past weekend. And, you know, I like word games a lot, but I struggled for the first minute or two. And then I realized, oh, I need to see the letters. I'm a visual person. So what I did was I made patches. Oh, where's all my stuff? I made patches. Here we are, of all the letters right on my embroidery machine. And I used that heavyweight stabilizer to do it. So let me show you in Patch and Applique Maker how to make it. I think you're going to really love this. And then I'm going to show you the on the house free design. And many of you made your bowls from last week, the bowl koozies. And so I'm going to show those, and then I'm going to show you this week's free design. So let's go ahead over to software. And I have my Perfect Embroidery Pro software opened up. Now I have all of our dime software. So if my software program doesn't look the same as yours, it's probably maybe because I have all the programs loaded on here. So I'm selecting the artwork tool, and I'm going to draw a little square dial, and I'm going to tell it I want it to be 1.5 inches wide, and click apply. And then I'm going to use the repeat tool, because I'm going to put, no, let's go ahead and do just 6 letters in a hooping. And I'm going to separate them by, you know, 1/2 inch apart. There we go. And then I'll select the text tool, and we'll type the letter A. And we'll type the letter B. Of course, I want to have my caps on, and I'll click apply. And I'm going to do this for 6 different letters, and it only takes a minute. I want you to see just how fast this is to do. And then we'll do the E. And then we're going to turn all those squares into an alphabet. Sorry about that. Kind of jumping around on me. We'll turn that into the F and click apply. And now with the select tool, I'm just going to select all of the patches, do convert to an applique, and then I'm going to take the letter, each individual letter, stick it inside a box, hit center, do the same for each individual letter. I mean, this goes so fast, right? I could do this whole alphabet in under 10 minutes for sure. Of course, they don't have to be in the order I'm putting them in, but they are. And now we know that that is a patch, and but I want it to be pre-cut, right? So I'm going to go into my Patch and Applique Maker features, and I'm going to hit change style. And from that drop-down menu, I'm going to select pre-cut patch. And that setting will ensure that when I make these patches all in one hoop, what's going to happen is I'm going to have a placement guide, a tack down for the patch, it'll stitch the letter, and then it'll repeat that for each patch, and then it will do the satin edge. But just so we could see, let's go ahead and change the color of our letters to red. And now since I'm going to use my digital cutter, I'm going to use my applique cutter on my software. And I know there's 26 letters in the alphabet. So in the window below, when it says repeats, I'll say 26. And here they are all laid out, ready to go on my scanner. And then I would hit save. And from the drop-down menu, I would hit my FCM format and give it a name, alpha maybe, and hit save. And then when that, you know, is going to USB, or I can send it over to my scan and cut, I am ready to cut that out. How fun is that? So let's go ahead and take a look at the color sequence so you can see. So there's my first patch, second patch, all the on and on. And then it will do the letters. And then lastly, it's going to do the satin. And when they come out of that water-soluble stabilizer, there's all my there's all my letters. Isn't that so much fun? I know. And let's see, Ibby, you said, yep. And the New York Times did just buy Wordle, right? And Aubrey, you discovered that it's very addictive. Well, the good thing about Wordle is you can only play once a day. Oh, I know there's a website you can go and you can play all the old ones. But if you start out kind of constricting yourself to one a day, it's the best way to go. Yeah. So much fun. So much fun. And let's see, Kristen Swanson, you like Oodle the math grid is easier for you. Let's see. But I know a lot of you love Wordle. I love it too. And you know what I was amazed to learn was that you could it's the same word. Doesn't matter where you start. Everybody has the same word. I couldn't believe that. Anyway, so let's see. Isn't that fun? We had so much fun. Let's get back over to PowerPoint so I can show you your projects that you did last week. Did Sue Brown have a great sew along? I didn't watch live because I was at a baby shower for my new granddaughter, but I was able to watch the replay, and that was really great. But a few weeks ago, we had the winter tree as a download, and Esther Hockland embroidered that and put it in a frame. That is gorgeous. What a lovely decoration for your home or whoever is going to be the recipient of that, Esther. Very nice. Reen Wilcoxon, our good friend in Embroidery Garden, she didn't bother with the embroidered koozie, the bowl koozie. She decided to stitch a notebook, one of her In the Hoop notebook projects, and she used cork fabric from Sally Tomato. Very nice, very nice. Here's Sue Brown's bowl that she did live last weekend, OML, on the YouTube channel. Isn't that lovely? Love the purple. And those beautiful flowers on the outside. Marilyn Patno, she used Mickey on the outside and a really pretty soft batik pink on the interior. Very, very nice. Marianne McCain Dottie. Oh, look at her. She's got some Irish fabric, some shamrocks for her applique on the two bowls, and yet she's stuck with the kind of Valentine's theme on the other. But that's a great example of how versatile these designs can be. You don't have to stitch, all the elements of the design. You don't have to put the words, you warm my heart. You can just eliminate that and, add a different kind of message or no message at all. And here we have Marianne Gilmore. She did a lovely job on hers with those hearts, really cheerful and seasonal. Very nice. Crystal Campbell. She decided to not stitch the whole rainbow kind of embellishment around the applique heart. Instead, she did an applique of her own, and yet she took our words, those micro fonts, that micro text, into her embroidery design. So let's see, Connie Lowe, you want to know what's the name of my embroidery program, and the software that I just used to show you how to make those Wordle letter chips, I would call them, is Perfect Embroidery Pro, is our full digitizing program. But really that applique portion is also available in our patch and applique maker. All of those features, the font, the rounded square, and the ability to change the patch into a pre-cut patch. So it does all of those simple steps for you. And if you're wondering what's the difference, well, it's changing the location of the placement guide and the tack down. So that's what it does. And the digital cutting feature is also in Patch and Applique Maker. So let's see. And yes, Cecilia, the bowl koozie is still available. Now, this program, this free design program this year is for the entire year, 52 weeks. You're going to get a free design every week. Those designs will be available all year. So if you miss a week, you can go back and get another one. We encourage you to, download them every week as we go along. It'll be easier for you to stay up to speed if you do it in that fashion. Okay, so let's see. And then we have Marjorie Hirschberger, our friend from Lancaster. She was here earlier. I don't know if she's still here, but did she do a lovely job? That's just beautiful. I love it. Really, really well done. So coming up soon is, oh, and here Esther Hopland. She also, boy, you're moving right along with us, Esther. I love it. Beautiful. I love the lilac, that soft lilac for the interior. Very well done. Just beautiful. And Linda Molden, lovely work. Aren't they fun? And boy, you know, it does warm your heart if you make this for someone. It warms your heart by the act of making and giving, and also warms the heart of the recipient. Very, very nice. Val Summer. Boy, we really had such great participation in this project. I'm sure Sue Brown had a lot to do with that by her really instructional sew along over on YouTube, on OML's YouTube channel. Very well done. So this week, well, one more. Now, Sarah Jones, she used fabric that is really bold and graphic and a whole lot of fun. She didn't add any of that element of the heart or you warm my heart. She just has these comic characters on her fabric. Super cute. Very well done. Okay, this week we have the rainbow hearts. Now, this is a great lesson. It's a lot of thread. We know it's a lot of thread, but it's a great lesson in color blending. And what you'll learn is how any color family, you know, whether it be yellow, pink, reds, violets, greens, blues, as long as you have light, medium, and dark shade, you know, use of that color family, you can get really beautiful color blending. So I thought I would maybe go into my software and show you that. So here's our rainbow hearts design. And as we fast forward through it, and I'll just kind of speed it up. So it's going to do the light color first, and then the medium blue, and then the dark. Same with the green. It's going to start light, medium, and dark. Light, medium, and dark for all of these 6 different colorways. Isn't that beautiful? Maybe it's a little easier to see in the gray. So I'm going here in my software, I'm going to turn off the other 2 colors so you can see the white. That's our first color, our lightest color. Then we add that medium gray, and now you can see that the white is not as visible. But I wanted to show you that the density of the medium gray that's going to overlap the white is much lighter than the density of the white underneath of it. So that means that that medium gray is going to allow that white thread to kind of bleed through, which is desirable in color blending. You don't want to have the same amount of threads stacked on top of each other because then you won't see the layers underneath. But when you lighten the density of the complex fill in each layer, that's what gives you true color blending. So for those of you who are learning to digitize or just trying to understand how to achieve certain color effects, that's a good lesson to learn, to download this embroidery design and then watch how it stitches out and really take a look at the amount of thread that's laid down in each layer. And that's what's going to give you success in color blending. Yeah. Oh, Ivy, you like that. Isn't that pretty? I know. I like that too. That rainbow hearts is just beautiful. And I think it's, you know, can be used for a lot of different projects. Great for schools, just great for decorative addition to maybe a tote bag or a center chest t-shirt. You know, I think lots of people would really like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, and you filled yours with your bowl. That's a great idea. You filled it with chocolate and gave it to someone. Very nice. Very nice. I know. It's a great show. So I think that's all I have for us today. Next week is all about stick hoops, and we're going to have Ashley Jones here, I think, next week, and then I'll be back after that. And I'm still counting down 10 weeks until I'm a grandmom again. Well, I have bonus grandchildren, a sweet little girl, Erin, who is 9 years old, and very masculine 3-year-old John. So we are so excited about welcoming a new little girl to our family in April. So let's see. Yeah. Oh, Stephanie Hardy, you just learned about paint color mixing. Yeah, well, hey, paint and thread are just different mediums to use as an artist, right? For sure. So I think you'll enjoy learning about that as you stitch that design. And, you know, have fun stitching, playing Wordle. I hope you get it every day. I'm batting 1,000, and I hope you are too. So until we meet again, it's great being here, and I really appreciate you joining us today. Bye for now.